Happy Tuesday, 7 Excel. So last week we looked at how to find slope given 2 points. And then on Friday, you guys looked at kind of proportional versus non-proportional equations. So I just want to quickly talk about our formula. I told you we're going to be using this quite a bit in the next few weeks. So y equals mx plus b. Remember, m represents our what? Our slope. Okay, think M mountains. How steep is it? Slope, rise over run. And our B represents our y-intercept. That is where our line intersects on the y-axis. So let's just practice a few of these kind of for a warm-up here. So writing an equation of a line, putting it into this form, the only two pieces that you need is your slope, your M, and your y-intercept. So once you have your equation, all you're going to substitute in is m and b. Remember, x and y stay there because those x and y represent multiple different coordinates that are on that line, that satisfy that line. So taking a look at example 1. So if I give you that the line has a slope of -5 and a y-intercept of 2, how could we write that equation? So we're going to use our y equals, our m or our slope is -5. That's our coefficient that goes in front of x. And our y-intercept is 2. So that's a +2 plus 2. So for example 2, if our slope is -1/2 and our y-intercept is -2, y equals slope, which is m, -1/2 times x. Our y-intercept is -2. So you want to indicate that with a -2 on the back. Okay. Now, example number 3, if our slope is 0, so slope goes in front of your x variable, you can put that. I'm going to show you in a second how it's not necessary. The y-intercept here is +3. So you may see an equation like this. I'm going to tell you probably about 9 times out of 10, or when you get into 9th grade as well, you will no longer see this. And we talked about this last week because any number, any x coordinate that you plug in right here, anything times 0 is always going to give you 0. So your equation is really going to look like this because anything times 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 is 3. So this is kind of the simplified version of that. Okay, so if your slope is 0, remember it's going to look like this on your graph. Therefore, it will go through the y-axis at 3. Here's your y-intercept. Example number 4. If your slope is 1/3 here, so y equals, my slope is my coefficient in front of x. If my y-intercept is 0, that means you do not have one. You do not need to put +0 here. It is not wrong if you put it there, but I'm just telling you. So for example here, or your more simplified version, when you have answer choices, you're going to get that for your answer choice. Okay, so that's quickly reviewing writing an equation of a line when you're given the slope and the y-intercept. So now let's take a look at what it would look like on a graph. Okay, I know this is going to be a little bit difficult when we start to do this on the computer, but I have a couple strategies for us to do and ways that we can practice this. So on number 1 here, first I want you, before you guys go to graph these lines, I want you to be able to identify what is the m, the slope, what is your b, the y-intercept. So your m, your slope here, that's right in front, is 3. Your y-intercept is -4. Make sure you include that sign. So when I go to graph, I always begin on my y-axis. That's a really easy, quick and easy starting point. So here's my y-axis. On my y-intercept, 1, 2, 3, 4 down from 0 is -4. There's my first point. Okay, so now knowing this, my slope or my rise over run is 3 over, if I had to write that as a fraction, you would write it over 1. So my rise over my run is 3 over 1. So from this point, I'm going to go up 3 over 1. put my next point. Up 3 over 1, put my next point. Up 3 over 1, put my next point. Now, that will go off the grid. That doesn't mean it stops. It does continue in that direction, but it is off of my grid lines. So if you wanted to satisfy the entire graph, you could go opposite back down. You can kind of use that waterfall effect. Down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1, over 1. And now I can add that point in there. So when we start to graph lines, we are going to use rulers. Do the best you can to use a straight edge to make sure that we can graph these. I am going to have you start practicing graphing these on the computer. Just like any of our other lines, make sure there's arrows on the end of your line because it will continue in each direction on the graph. And then also on the algebra regions, you do lose a point if you do not label your line. So this is the equation. Somewhere on your graph, right next to the line, you need to label it, okay? You do lose a point on the regions if you don't do that. So please be mindful of that. Number 2, my M or my slope is what here? And my y-intercept is positive 5. So I'm going to begin on my y-axis at positive 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this slope is negative, therefore my line should be going downhill. That's a big indication right there. So that's why I always indicate that the negative sign goes with the numerator, n, negative with the numerator. I'm going to go down 1 over 4. So I'm still staying, instead of going up and over, this time I'm going down and over. Down 1, and that would be off the graph, so I don't want to blot that point, but I am going to go back in my other direction. So this one, I'm going to use that pattern, up 1, left 4, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And that would go off as well. So I can get 3 solid points in there. Use my straight edge. Connect my points. Make sure I'm adding arrows. And then last but not least, I want to make sure that I label my line so I don't lose that easy point. So y-intercept at 5, it's a negative downhill slope. Okay, last one. My slope here is negative 2. My y-intercept is positive 3. So my y-intercept is positive 3. My slope here is negative 2, so that's going to be a downhill slope. If there isn't a denominator, remember it's always over 1. So I'm going to go down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. You get the idea. Now to get a nice perfect straight line, you can kind of use your pattern. And use your straight edge. Connect your points. Draw arrows. And last but not least, label that line. Okay, just to double check, negative slope, negative downhill line. Always double check that those make sense. Your slope has to match the picture of your graph. So last piece here, writing an equation given the slope and the y-intercept, okay? I want you guys to practice writing these 4 equations, kind of like we did in the warm-up. Everyone starts with y equals, and then fill in your m and your b. You guys are going to try these 4. Now this part. So writing the equation of the graph. So if I give you a graph, I want you to be able to identify the m and the b and the equation. So the easiest piece to start with, just like when I go to graph it, the easiest piece to start with is your y-intercept. Right here is my y-intercept at positive 2, up 2. Now from here, I can see I have a positive slope And I'm going to count my rise over run from each point. Well, this rise over run is pretty simple. Up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. So my slope is 1. Now that you have these two key pieces, you can easily and quickly write an equation. Y equals 1x, and that's a positive 2. Sometimes you will see this, if this is a 1, they may just put it like that. Okay? So 1x is the same as x. You can see those interchangeably. Number 9, my y-intercept is the easiest to start with here, and that's at -1. My slope, so I've got, this is my next point. You could use from here to here. I always just tend to start with my y-intercept because it's very quick and easy to find. So from here, 1, 2, 3, up 3 over 2. And this is why when you write your slope like this, we can leave it in our improper fraction, okay? Because sometimes it's a little easier to see our rise over run when we go to graph things, okay? So our equation here, y equals 3/2 x minus 1. Number 10, what kind of slope does this have? This has a 0 slope. My y-intercept, this line does cross through the y-axis at +2. It does not have a slope. So remember, we are not going to write 0 times x. You can, it's not wrong, but it's not in simplest form. Okay? But it does have a y-intercept. It goes through the y-axis at 2. So my equation here would be y equals 2. Remember, if it's an up and down line, that would go through the x-axis, and your equation would be x equals whatever number it passes through. Number 11. Let's see if you guys, after I've done a few examples with you, what is my y-intercept here? My y-intercept is -3. Now notice my slope is what? My slope is negative. It's going downhill. It's going down 3 over 1. And you can see that does that from every point. Down 3 over 1. Down 3 over 1. So -3 over 1. Does it need to be over 1? Not necessarily. You could write -3. So my equation would be y equals -3x minus 3. Number 12. What is my y-intercept here? What kind of slope do I have? I have a negative slope down 2 over 5. Down 2 over 5. So what would my equation of this line be? And last graph here. This is a nice easy y-intercept is 0. My slope is positive, so 1, 2, 3, up 4 over 1. Up 4 over 1. You can write it like that. When you write an equation, what would be my equation of this line? Okay, so that's just kind of putting some things together that we saw last week. Getting into today's lesson. What we're getting into is writing an equation of a line when we're given the slope, the m, and we're giving one point that the line also passes through. So instead of you finding the slope of 2 points like we did last week, now I want you to write the equation of a line when I give you what the slope is and what a point is. So how we do this algebraically is we want to write down our formula. And we're going to substitute our slope in for our m. Okay, and now we don't have a b, but we do have a point. We have coordinate points here that satisfy that are one point that is on the line. So what letters do these stand for? This is my x, this is my y. So now I'm going to plug these in. X is 3, my y is negative 2. So now the only thing I can solve for is b. So I'm going to bring down my b, and I'm going to start to solve using my equation solving skills. So negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, plus what would give me negative 2? So we can do the inverse here, one-step equation. Opposite of negative 6, positive 6. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, do to the other. Those cancel. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. So my b is equal to 4. So if we now know our slope and my y-intercept, can I write an equation of the line? I can. Y equals mx plus b. So my m is negative 2. My b is positive 4 that I solved for. I solved for that using only one of the points that are on this line. There are lots of different points on this line. If you go to graph this line, you're going to see multiple points across the line. So that's just one of them that are on the line. So we don't want you to put those in because that's just one example of a point on the line. This is the equation of this line satisfying this criteria of a slope and 1 point. So I want you guys to try a few here. Okay, so always start with your equation and plug in your pieces. So my slope, my m, is negative 2. This is my x and y. If you confuse these, you're going to put them in the equation in the wrong spots, and then you're going to solve wrong. So make sure you slow down and take an extra second to think about those. My y is negative 5. I'm going to solve for b. So negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, plus my b is negative 5. Inverse of negative 4, positive 4. Therefore, my y-intercept, my b, what's negative 4 or negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. So if I have my b and I have my m slope, how do I write an equation? Y equals mx, my b is negative 1. How would we do it with a fraction? Same concept. My slope is 1/3, x then y. My x is 6. My y is 4. 1/3 times 6, you can throw that in your calculator or you can multiply. 6 times 1 is 6, divided by 3 is 2. 2 plus what is 4? Show your inverse step there. 2 plus 2, 4 minus 2 is 2, so my b is 2. My m, my slope, is negative 1/3, so my equation would be 1/3 x plus 2. Okay, why don't you guys try number 3 and number 4? I will show you one example when we have a slope of 0. Writing our equation, my slope is 0, x then y. So x is 5, my y is negative 2. Remember I told you anything times 0 is always going to give me 0. Okay, so this isn't going to really change. So my b is negative 2, okay, because the inverse of 0 is still 0. Negative 2 minus 0, so to speak, is still negative 2. So if my slope is 0 and my y-intercept is negative 2, how do I write that equation? Y equals, I don't need to write 0 times x because remember anything times 0 is always 0, but my y-intercept is negative 2. That's how we would write that in simplest form. All right, I'm going to have you guys try number 3, number 4, and number 6 right now. Okay, pause this video and take a look and see if your number 3, 4, and 6 match. All right, last example is when we have a slope that's a fraction. Same concept, guys, not anything different. Plugging in my 4/5 for my slope. My x is negative 5. My y is negative 9. You can either cross cancel or you can multiply and divide. So 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Negative 20 divided by 4, negative 4. Inverse of negative 4 is positive 4. So my b is equal to, what's negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5. My m is 4/5, my b is negative 5, so my equation is y equals 4/5 x minus 5. Okay, you guys are going to finish these examples for our classwork grade today. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you Thursday.